All right. What is up, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of the FIT40 Podcast. Today, we have another incredible guest. We have Alissa Christine in the house. She is an expert when it comes to decluttering, coming up with simple recipes. And on top of all that, fun fact, she was my prom date. So, Alissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Very happy to have you. Now, I know me and Alissa were talking about this before I hit the record button, but I'm like, decluttering is not my wheelhouse. I am the king of hoarding and having a bunch of random crap because I just don't want to throw it out just in case. But I'm hoping that, Alissa, you could provide us with some really, really good tips if anybody else finds them in that exact same situation.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. And I've been there, by the way.
Well, why don't we start with that? Like, what got you into this whole idea of minimizing things and simplifying things? Like, where did you start and what prompted that transition?
Yeah. So I would say I've always been a little bit of a minimalist, even before I knew it, because I was very distracted by visual clutter. Always. But I think a lot of people are distracted by visual clutter. They're just not aware of it. I was very aware of it. And then post-college was when it really came out. So I was studying for my CPA exam, which is a grueling accounting exam, and I just could not find the means to get myself to study. I had all this time to study and I would find something else to do. So I would sit in my room and there were all these distractions around. Laundry to fold. Oh, that's broken. I should fix that. I should have really read that book. My things were staring at me. And I think that that's when I had this pivotal moment of saying, these are all distractions that are not helping me achieve my goals and I need to remove them. So what I did was first I left the house. I started studying only at Starbucks where there were no tasks for me to complete. Of course, there were people there and some could say distractions, but they're not things on my to-do list. So after that, I was just seeking self-help podcasts, how to simplify, how to get productive, how to get organized. And I stumbled upon minimalism in a podcast. Actually, I don't think it exists anymore.
I was going to ask, did you come across the Minimalist documentary? Because I watched that and I'm like, these are my people.
Yes, I have watched that. That was after I had discovered minimalism, a few years after. And that is a great documentary. If you haven't seen that yet, jump onto YouTube. I think it's for free on YouTube. They have it. It used to be on Netflix. The Minimalist documentary.
Fair warning, it makes you question your whole wardrobe. You're looking at the closet like, geez, I had no idea the last time I wore this shirt or those pants.
It's so true. And it brings into light all of the overconsumption in America in a really, really harsh light. And it's very eye-opening.
Well, it makes you feel a little guilty every time you get an Amazon package. You're like, oh man, another cardboard box. Okay, I'm horrible.
I know. Well, consumption's part of life, but it's mindful consumption that we're after. So that was the pivotal moment for me. I started ruthlessly decluttering. I use that word a lot. I went really deep. I decluttered over 70% of my stuff. And I passed all my exams. There were 4 of them. And I continue to find new ways to use minimalism, especially as a new mom after having my daughter. It keeps coming back up that I need to go deeper and do different things and use different strategies. So it just is a practice that I use all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible because I know most people listening right now are probably thinking 70%. I don't know if I could let go of all that stuff. Like, is there a rule that you use when you're like, okay, if it hasn't been used in X amount of time or something, like, let's just get rid of it?
That's a good question. And no, and it's for a certain reason. So a lot of people, decluttering has become very popular. And a lot of minimalists or people who declutter, they just say, if you haven't used it in 6 months or a year, let it go. But you don't want the declutter to be aimless either. You don't want to just start getting rid of stuff to get rid of stuff. My approach is get clear on your goals and then clear the way. So that's like my little slogan. I use it all the time. And I don't recommend decluttering something just to declutter it. So if it hasn't been used in 6 months, a year, any sort of time limit, it doesn't really matter if it's not in your way. What I'm after is, okay, let's say you're in the kitchen and you cannot move throughout your kitchen. It takes you forever to clean up from a meal, or your family can't get involved because they don't know where things go. That would be a problem area with some pain points. And that's where I would focus the declutter instead of just check what's in your junk drawer or something someone would randomly recommend. It's all about being mindful and having a goal in front of you, which I know you talk about all the time on your podcast. Why do you want to work out? The big question is why. You're very good with that with your clients.
I appreciate that. And it's like you read my mind. I was literally just going to say, like, having the goal in mind, it seems like it's this universal truth where it's like, don't do stuff aimlessly. Don't do stuff just because. Like, understand why. Cause then you're always going to have that little toddler inside of your head asking, well, why? Why?
Right. And I think goal setting can sound like sort of a corporate task, right?
Hmm.
It sounds like I do something, but it doesn't have to be that structured of an exercise. You can focus on how you feel instead of a tangible goal. How do I feel when I work out this way or when I eat this way? Or what feeling am I after? What makes me feel like my soul is on fire? What makes me motivated and inspired? That's the whole purpose of setting a goal. And that can be the goal.
Yep, exactly, exactly. Now, if somebody's listening and they're like, okay, my goal is to reduce a lot of stress because this is, or I guess what we want to do first is bring awareness because a lot of people don't realize how stressful it can be without even thinking about it. So let me put a pin in that. But have you noticed that it almost doesn't feel like it's stressful until you get rid of something?
Do you mean the clutter is stressful until you get rid of it?
Yeah. So when it comes to decluttering, do you feel the effects like physically from decluttering? And you're like, I didn't realize how much of a weight this was.
Absolutely. It's the same dopamine response that you get from purchasing when you go, impulse shopping or on a shopping binge if you have a shopping addiction. It's actually the same feeling when you declutter. And especially, you can get some quick wins and you can feel the effects immediately. And that is visual clutter. So, things that are all over the walls and the counters that your brain is actually processing every time you walk into the room and while you're in the room that you might not even realize. So if you have all those cute little signs up in your kitchen that say home is where the heart is or whatever it is,
Bless
those
this
are
home.
yeah, nothing wrong with those signs, but I want to call attention to the fact that your brain actually does constantly read them subconsciously, and it can be very overwhelming for your senses. It can be like a sensory overload. So removing visual clutter can be a really quick win.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, it makes me think of like when I see my fiance's computer tabs and there's like 300 open at once. I'm like, oh my God, this hurts to look at. But if somebody's listening right now and they're like, yeah, I definitely have that going on, like, let's talk like step by step, like certain areas that can be taken advantage of. And I know your whole thing is like the capsule kitchen. So why don't we start with the kitchen? Like, what are some problem areas that most people have that they might not be aware of that it's like, hey, if we do one, two, or three things here, it's going to feel pretty nice.
Yeah, where I would start with that is having a fridge full of food or a home full of food and nothing to eat. People get so bogged down by what to cook for dinner. That is pretty much the number one complaint I get about the kitchen. And so, what I would really recommend is getting honest with yourself about first goal setting, confirm the pain points, evaluate what's bothering you. Is it that these meals just aren't easy enough to cook? Or for me, I'm a recipe developer. So I get all these crazy ideas in my head of I'm going to make this and this, and then I don't have time. So if you get really honest with yourself about the season of life that you're in, and you start there to pare down on the actual food that you have. I keep my fridge very, very decluttered so that I can easily pull out what I need. I have a meal plan every week so that if I'm busy and my husband comes home, he knows what's for dinner and he can pick it up. So when you streamline the food, I think that's a big win because you can get really clear on a very small and limited menu that you have and make it easy for yourself. It doesn't mean everything has to be from scratch, right? I don't cook everything from scratch. I use shortcuts. I might buy pre-cooked organic chicken from Applegate Farms. I love that stuff. It's just one less thing I have to do, but it's the mental exercise of getting over the fact that you're going to really pare down your food. You can donate it, but that's where I would start.
And I love how you brought up the whole concept of communicating because I know a lot of people that I talk to are pretty much the primary when it comes to cooking food. But it's like when you have something clear that says, okay, we're having this, that's when you can recruit your husband or maybe even your kids if they're of driving age to be like, we're having this tonight. Can you guys please help me out?
Right. I would recommend putting it up on your fridge. Actually, it's the only thing I have on my fridge is the weekly meal plan so that everyone in the house knows what's going on. They know the plan and they can quickly at a glance jump in and help out. And it can be something really easy. It can be frozen chicken nuggets. You don't have to go from 0 to 100 overnight if you're used to eating out. It can be breakfast for dinner. It can be anything that fits your current season.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think a little bit of Big Bang Theory when Sheldon's like, no, every night we have Taco Tuesday, and then we have this, and then we
Yeah.
have that, and then we have Chinese food on the weekend.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's sort of like a capsule menu. And that's something that I also do. So you have a routine and you know you're picking from a very short list of meals. I think that's really tough for moms. It was tough for me in the beginning because you're just carrying the mental load. You are just carrying so much of the mental load and you don't need all the clutter on top of that. Not just the food and the recipes, but the physical clutter too. It's just too much to manage. And we have to get honest with ourselves about what inventory we can reasonably manage.
And with that, like being that I know a lot of people keep snacks around the house because their kids love snacks and things like that. When you declutter, I know your little one is very little, but like, do you feel any like mom guilt like that comes with that where it's like, but I feel like I should have X, Y, and Z, even though I know that it's better to not have them in the house?
I do. I mean, those are natural feelings. And what I did was I brought my husband into it and we looked at it together because at first he eats totally different than I do. He's a big meat eater, he's a big snacker. I'm a big snacker, but I try not to be.
Well, I mean,
We
when
had to
you've
come
got
to,
all those recipes that you have on Instagram, I mean, I could imagine he's like, okay, well, her video went up. I can't wait to get home and devour this.
yes, he texts me all the time. Where is that? Did you finish it? I'm like, no, it's in the refrigerator. No, it's true though. I mean, and the snacking is hard because if the kids are eating something and you don't want to be eating it, you have to have that separation and that discipline. But that's where I recommend keeping your own set of snacks and just having it be in your own little drawer. I have these plastic drawers that stack, and that's where I keep all my stuff. Dates or little protein bars or whatever it is. But it is hard in the beginning. Just bring your family into it, I would say. And like evaluate your health goals because this food declutter, you can tailor it to whatever your health goals are. That's the beauty of it. It's very, very mindful.
Yeah, and I love that. And I definitely want to get into the recipes. But before we do that, I want to make sure we cover the other big areas of the house. I know another one that I saw one of your videos was the junk drawer. Because I know I have like not even just a junk drawer. That's a different drawer. But I have a junk drawer that's insane. And then below it, an empty space that's also full of random crap. So if somebody has a junk drawer that they're just like, I know where everything is because that for some reason we always do, but they want to declutter it, what would be your tips on that?
So for a junk drawer, I would ask where in the house it is and does it belong there? So for me, mine's in the kitchen. We have phone chargers there. We have loose change, extra credit cards, whatever it is. And for us, that makes sense because this is kind of our meeting place. Our home base would be the kitchen, but I would evaluate where is the junk drawer and does it actually make sense location wise? And then I would declutter anything that doesn't belong in that space. So if you're not using something in the room that it's in, relocate it somewhere else. It doesn't necessarily always mean get rid of something. That's a big misconception about decluttering is that you have to just throw everything out. You can actually relocate it and that's still decluttering your space. So just evaluating where it is, what do you use, what do you not use? Can something go? We had little tools in there. My husband, drills, little screws and that sort of thing that went in the utility room. So it's just kind of giving it a refresh, putting the change away, doing the whole, what do they call it? Do they still have those things? I have them because I feel like I'm ancient, but those little things you wrap the change in, I do that every so often. Not gonna lie.
Oh, yeah.
And you bring it to the bank.
Yeah. I was like, wait a
Remember?
sec. This is in that part of my brain that stores the VHS tapes and the flip phones.
Yeah, exactly. But if people want to declutter it, there's also ways to organize it a little better. I'm a big fan of the drawer organizers. I'm a big fan of clear storage so that you can see what's in there. A lot of people don't realize that their organizing style is visual. So if they put something away in an opaque bin and they can't see it, they forget they have it. So clear bins, pretty much always, I would say. Labels, if you want to put something down in your junk drawer, and put a label on it that says chargers, that's where the chargers go, and sort of get your family on board. The labels seem remedial, but they're actually not. And it's very quick and easy for your brain to process what's going on and where to put things.
Of that. And then you could even use it in reverse. Like, say, if you're trying to cut down on snacking, go with the opaque one. Like, make sure you can't see it, out of sight, out of mind. But then the stuff that you actually need, keep that in the clear stuff so you could get the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now the other one I had on my list is your sleep area, because I know many people that listen to this podcast definitely struggle on sleep. So it's like the better we can make that area and the better sleep we can get, the better. So do you have any tips on the bedroom?
I do. And I'm so glad you asked this question because there's a lot of psychology that goes into this.
Well, I'm a sleep
The first thing
diva, so like I'm very invested in this right now.
That's wonderful. I also love my sleep, but I have trouble sleeping. So I started taking magnesium and other supplements. But there are things I did to declutter my bedroom that massively, massively helped. One of them is to make sure that under your bed is clear. There's actually psychology behind this that says you'll sleep better if the space underneath your bed is clear. So that is the first thing I would recommend. Also, it's just color psychology on the walls. I don't put a bright and energizing, invigorating color on the walls. I have like a deep blue that helps you sleep. Again, with the visual clutter on the walls, if you have a lot of pictures and wall hangings, I would recommend really, really paring down on those. And again, it doesn't mean you have to get rid of it. There are a couple of things that I do when someone's not sure what to get rid of. One is to put it in what's called a maybe bin and put the date on it that day, and put the date on it 6 months from then and figure out if you reached for it. And if not, you don't even remember what's there, let it go. But these are ways you can start to make changes in your space and see how they feel without committing to completely getting rid of something. So put it in a bin, take everything off your walls if you want, and just calm and quiet your space, because everything you see is telling you something. It's either telling you you should, read this book, or remember me, your broken watch, you need to get me fixed. Everything's like an endless to-do list. So I would just recommend taking everything out of sight. Clear off your bedside table and just keep it very, very neutral and calm in that space.
Of that, because it totally makes sense. Like when you see that thing that's a little bit broken or needs to be addressed, you're just like, yep, noted, noted, noted. And then it all just sits in your brain and you're like, it adds to the stress bucket.
It does. And it adds to the guilt, which mom any more of. We have way more than enough. It's the guilt of all of those things that are unfinished, the projects and the things that we need to do. There's actually a book by Fumio Omasaki, and I think it's called, I have to remember what it's called, Goodbye Things. That's what it's called. And that's where I was introduced to this concept of the never-ending to-do list. And it's everything that you see in your space telling you that you need to take an action on it.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I'm already getting ideas here. I don't know about everybody listening, but I've already got like 4 or 5 things I'm going to address after this. But the last thing on my list I had here was, especially for the new moms, like, or maybe even if their children are starting to grow up and they're kind of out of the infant phase, past the toddler phase, like what about the baby stuff? Because I know it's so hard to let go of certain things, especially if there's that nostalgic component. Like, what would you say around that?
I would say set a boundary based on how much you want to store. So you can have 2 totes, 5 totes of things. How much do you want to hold on to? And when you put it like that, it's like, maybe I don't want to hang on to 15 totes of baby things. Baby things are so hard because there are those memories attached to them, but it's all about like separating the memory from the thing itself. A lot of things also are hard to get rid of because if you have more kids, one child might not like something, but the other one might. So there's a lot of temporary storage going on, and that's fully okay. But I am pretty ruthless with, if my daughter doesn't like something, I put it in a bag and we donate it. And as she gets older, if you have toddlers or kids who are a little bit older who you can have a conversation with about this, talking about donating and giving to someone, you get something and you give something, and it's a good feeling. And teaching them that really helps get them on board as well.
Thinking of having this exact same conversation with my fiance about condiments, because it's like we've got to give them away at this point. So this can work in multiple areas.
Yes. I mean, so for that, but honestly, let's talk about that for a second. So
Yes.
the recipe you guys make all the time. If the condiments were a one-time thing, I want to try this new recipe. I do that all the time. I wanted to try short rib sliders. So I made short rib sliders in the Instant Pot, and I had horseradish sauce, which was a condiment I don't normally use. And we haven't made them since. So it doesn't live in my house anymore. It was a couple bucks if I need to repurchase it. But to me, I don't need to take up space. I don't have that big of a fridge. And it was kind of like I paid for the experience of having it. Now I don't need to then store it for any length of time.
Yeah. It's like you almost paid for the knowledge of knowing, can I use this or can I not? Like, am I missing out on a really cool spice or ingredient? And to know, okay, it's not going to fit most of the things and I'm not going to use it. It's like, okay, probably better off not purchasing it again. But you got the experience, because I know that's most people's big gripe when it comes to trying out recipes that they found online, or like if it's out of like my recipe book, for example, like some of them do include a few like ingredient heavy things where we're getting into the double digits. So what are your favorite ways to get around that and simplify and make it a little bit more time friendly and maybe even more budget friendly?
So I would recommend going back to basics and going with your favorite recipes growing up. That's where I always start. And so the internet is a black hole when it comes to recipes. And I think that moms, myself included, this is what I used to do all the time. I used to just scour Pinterest for recipes, and they were so complicated. To your point, they had so many ingredients that I didn't have. And it took me hours to finally decide on one because it was information overload and I was just consuming too much data. So I would recommend either a physical recipe book, if you have one, or recipes that were passed down or your favorite go-tos. Start there and stick with things that have limited ingredients and things that can go between different recipes. If you buy one spice, identify multiple recipes that you can use it for before you actually purchase it. And that's kind of a big way that I get around things. And make sure you don't use a lot of equipment. If something says food processor, I skip over it. I'm not using my food processor.
Yeah.
I will use the Instant Pot. Use one pot. I will put something in the oven. But if it requires me to wash up too many things, I'm skipping over that recipe.
I'm with you. I'm all about the set it and forget it recipes here. It's like, talk to me about oven, air fryer, slow cooker. That's my jam.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to recipes, I know like on your page in particular, it seems like most of the time they're only like 4, 5, 6 ingredients. Like it's nothing super crazy, but they look absolutely amazing. So, what are some ways that you've, I guess, simplified it to the point where it's doable over and over and over again without feeling like you need to add a million things to try and get it to taste, I guess, that next level better, I guess you could put it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for saying so. So, what I try to do is make sure that I can keep the ingredients on hand at all times and that they're basic ingredients. And the reason for that is I started recipe developing really formally during COVID, and there wasn't a lot of things available. So, I started with mostly shelf stable recipes and very, very basic recipes. And so I don't really go too crazy on ingredients. Maybe here or there, like I'll use dragon fruit or something that I feel is exotic or
Well, it says
different.
dragon, so it is exotic. It counts.
It is by default, yeah. But I really try to make it accessible where people have this stuff on hand all the time and I keep it on hand all the time. Crazy expensive ingredients just aren't sustainable these days. You know, the prices of groceries, and the more, the easier a recipe is, the more likely I am going to make it from home instead of ordering out. That's kind of my main motivation, is I don't want to order out so much. It's better for your health to cook from home, and it's better on your wallet. So limited ingredients, limited menu. I make the same things over and over again. No shame in that. And whatever is accessible to someone, just go for that.
Love that. Love that. Because I know many, many people will find that very helpful, especially just knowing that it's okay to make simple recipes. Like you don't need to win Instagram Mom of the Year award on every single time you decide to cook.
It's so true. And I think people get hung up also on the health factor, which healthy is such a controversial word. So you're not going to find me saying a recipe is healthy. I will say that it's scratch made or I make it from home. And I thought of your slogan, better beats perfect. And that's kind of the same mentality. So if you're not buying it, at the store, it's better than store bought. So using simple ingredients, going back to basics. So that's kind of what I follow. And other than that, I just go with what's easy for me because it's so easy for moms and everyone to get, trapped down this rabbit hole of every ingredient has to be absolutely perfect and 0 calorie. And that's not good either. So you have to just breathe and tune out all of the information overload that's all over the news and social media and all of that, and just go with what works for you in your season of life.
Yeah. And I love that. It's so simple. It's like just do this, and let's just figure it out as we go. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to do this perfectly. And that's not the point. It's to get better as you go and keep picking one thing to work on each time. So if you guys take nothing from this podcast, just pick one thing that you heard from Alissa and you're just like, okay, I'm going to try this today. And then you could come back and listen again and then try something else.
Right. I think that's a great one. And I think when it comes to recipes, one little swap here and there on a basic recipe can make a big difference. So if you make pasta a few times a week, I was thinking back to this. I thought to myself, how did my mom cook every night? Back when I was growing up, we didn't order out. The doorbell wasn't ringing every day. And all of a sudden, we have more advancements in technology and more data and more recipes, and yet we're more overwhelmed than ever. So how did she do it? And maybe she made pasta 2 times a week or 3 times a week. And that was just what was for dinner. She wasn't looking up the latest New York Times, like best-selling recipe or the most trendy recipe. She was doing what she could. So if you make one simple switch, for example, if you're making pasta for your kids, I cook it in bone broth sometimes or chicken stock instead of just in water. And that will add additional flavor, additional nutrients, and it's so easy to do. You don't have to change your process at all. So just focus on making little tweaks to try something new. Experiment and have fun.
Exactly. Because I know I've said it multiple times on this podcast, but let's be honest, we only really rotate through usually 7 to 10 meals. So it's like, you're going to stick to your basics, make them as best you can. And then if you're going to try another recipe, try one, just one, nail it, work it into the rotation, and then move on to the next one. It doesn't need to be something different every single time.
Absolutely. Yes. I completely agree.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we just covered a lot. This might be the most condensed podcast I've done to date, where it's like, wow, we got a million things on the agenda hammered out in less than 30 minutes. So amazing job on your part, Alissa. You nailed it.
I was telling Brian before the podcast, this is my first podcast ever. So I'm really excited to be here and I'm glad to cover these topics. They're just really important topics. And if I could say one thing about minimalism, decluttering, and keeping a simple life, simple home management systems, it's that you really want to focus on what's going to make a meaningful impact rather than just getting something done to get it done, and really keeping the goal before you. That's the whole point. And it just gets much deeper than minimalism and all of that. It just is all about you living life to the fullest and figuring out what you want out of life and removing absolutely everything that's in your way or that's a distraction or that's bogging you down. So it's just really a practice and a way of thinking.
And I just realized this is going to be going out right as people are starting to spring clean. So talk about amazing timing. So
Perfect.
yeah, this will be perfect timing. So again, Alissa, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. And I know that everybody here definitely appreciates all the tips that you just dropped. Now, if somebody was like, okay, Alissa sounds incredible, I want to see these recipes, I want to see these tips that they keep alluding to, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me over on Instagram at this_capsule_kitchen, and also on YouTube, same handle. I have guided declutters. I have chit chats about swapping your mindset around your things and recipes. And if you really need one-on-one decluttering, motivation or consultation, I also offer that. So you can just send me an email, thiscapsulecitchen@gmail.com, or just DM me on Instagram.
Awesome.
And thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. And just so everybody knows, you don't have to go searching. I'm going to put all those links down below in the description or the show notes, wherever you're watching or listening. So go click away, make sure you're following Alissa's stuff, and you will be happier for it, no doubt. So thank you guys for making it all the way through. Again, thank you, Alissa. And until next time, guys, I'll see you all later. But until then, go kick some ass. Bye-bye.